let's talk about RA715 Swordthrust by Sam Shirley and Daniel Greenberg, with a lovely cover by Boris Vallejo. This is a module for suitable for use with Advanced Dungeons and Dragons from Mayfair in the Roll Aids series. I heard about this originally on Prince of Nothing's blog. This is the third party from first edition period, and Roll Aids had a bunch of stuff which some of which is pretty strong, some of which is pretty bad. I think it actually compares pretty favourably to the Best of Judges Guild. I think because if you take away Bledsoe and Jaquays, so more or less 4 modules from Judges Guild, there's very few other big names that are absolute top tier in terms of modules, and some of the RA series is actually pretty good or pretty creative, and I own maybe 5 of them. Swordthrust I have run, and it is a 40 pager, and it's really good. It is, I don't know if it's as good as, maybe my second ever RPG review was Caverns of Thracia, and I don't know if it's as good as that. Caverns of Thracia is really very, very good, and has a lot going on very efficiently. But Swordthrust is not so far off as you might think, given you've probably not heard of it, unless you've kind of read the same kind of things as I read. Basically, it is mostly it's about a 5-level mountain full of weird stuff, plus some extra stuff outside the dungeon as well. But mostly it's about that. You're hired by a wizard, so says the blurb, to take a relic and go and get other relics. Basically, he wants you to retrieve a bunch of relics from a mountain. The blurb, actually, as I reread it, is not actually accurate. It's obviously been written for a different version of the module, or whoever, the editor, didn't actually read it. It is basically, the big things going on is that it's quite efficient at giving you a very full weird environment and justifying it. It's somewhere in a category with most obviously actually something like Lost Caverns of Sojkanth. What I mean is that it's a monster zoo dungeon environment in lots of ways, albeit with sentience and factions and stuff. Then again, Sojkanth has that. It has a bunch of other stuff. The dungeon is only half of it, or just over, I should say. Technically, it's 27 pages, deals with the dungeon stuff, including the approach to the dungeon, and the rest is intro. I'll go through it and I'll talk about it. I think in general, the highlights would say it is mostly acceptably laid out. 2-column, reasonably large text. Occasionally wall of texty, but not too bad. There are some sections that are there's things like level maps are sometimes displayed in the wrong place, effectively. So first level, it says, that is the second level map you may be able to see there, and that's pretty common that the map for a level actually is associated with text for the wrong level because of just the fact that it starts the next page. There's level 2, inconsistently to first level, you'll notice. And so there's a few layout things, there's a few wall of texty things, there's a few things where you're flipping back to chiefly to the dungeon intro, and the dungeon intro actually comes after the first section about the dungeon and the approach to the dungeon. So there's some irritating things, but it's not that bad. Basically, just in general, the first part of the book, it gives you an intro, which is a summary of the fact that basically an Elder Titan, which is actually kind of a 2E idea, really, like the idea of the lesser Titans still being these 20 HD godlings, but Elder Titans like Kronos and stuff being powers, gods. There's only avatars of them that you meet. You cannot fight the god itself. But this Titan, at the end of their time in the world, men appeared, coming from the thoughts of Titans apparently, and given form from the elements of the Titan's body. And the Titans never quite know whether humans are they chiefly good or evil. And one Titan ends up really dreaming about this. In fact, perhaps they all do, but one tries to dream about this and work out what's going on with humans, and that obviously takes place over millennium. So pretty mythic story. There are basically 10 pieces of armor which are associated with controlling or waking up the Titan. Why? Don't know. But I guess there's a sort of, in Exalted terms, like there's a fetish soul kind of thing going on. These are things which in some way, because the Titan's brain, the Titan's body is full of his thoughts, his imaginations, I guess the armor is a sort of embodiment of his will. There's a thing where a wounded stranger comes in, a wounded halfling thief you can heal, and she's delivering a bracer from the Chatar Mountains to Morlian, and is bringing it to him. Sorry. Then you're potentially attacked in another pre-written encounter by a dirge priest and some goblins. Yeah. Apparently a 42 proofs. I mean, I didn't use this section in it, but I just use it as a dungeon locale, and I use Morlin as the hook. But there's some preset encounters to get you in. There are then also 7 PCs and a henchman who can be a PC, those lower skill. 7th level's thief, 4th level fighter, elf who's 4/3 fighter magic user, 6th level dwarf fighter, 6th level human cleric, 5th level human magic user, and 3rd level human fighter, plus a 2nd level human fighter is the henchman. And they're really good PCs. They're much better on 2 pages compared to 1, much better than Gary's tournament PC summaries. You get a couple of paragraphs about the character, and just with a sort of things they might care about. Grim Ben is scarred and wants to save up to get a regeneration spell, but he's kind of good-hearted. His sidekick defends him from criticism when he's rude, or at least he explains it and apologises for it. Yazana, the 7th level thief, only has 1 elven boot but really wants another one, or would like to get back to having 2, but also really loves rare books, things like that. Tildon, the elf multi-class, is an exiled royal. And so there's just a bit of an intro there if you're playing it as a tournament module. Then this guy Morlian, he's just a lovely, friendly wizard. Of course he's not, he's evil. He's secretly lawful evil, but he's very influential, and he collects lots of stuff, and he wants this suit of armour and information about how to use it so he can become ever more powerful. He wants the throne of the Titan, presumably because he thinks he can gain power from it. He gives boots of climbing and a ring of knock to the party, which is obviously how they're going to get to and from and form bases round this big mountain. There's then a description of his town, and the town is a weaker section. It's called Ferreberg. You do have a map there. It is described in the slightly dumpy text in 9 locations over 4 pages, and there's some tensions. Some people are kind of suspicious. The dwarves who are local and are part of the kind of the smelting ferro iron smelting works and stuff, they're a bit suspicious of Morlian, but no one wants to oppose him. The Viceroy is trying to eliminate his members of his family who are still part of a thieves guild, as well as the assassins who he hired, who are a bit like the old woman who swallowed a spider to catch the fly. And there's a thing set up where with both these things, when you come back, you might want to fight Morlian when you get back, and Erskine, Visper Erskine, or Erkin. Ugh, what a terribly confusing name for English standards. But Visper Erkin might also hire you for a lot of money, 10,000 gold pieces each, to destroy all these people who are annoying him. So there's a few subplots in Ferreberg. You might be able to find out more before you go to the Titan's Crown about Morlian, and the fact he might be a bother in the future, or he has ill purposes. But it's a bit underdeveloped, and because when you think this is barely longer than a 32-pager, and it's got a 5-level dungeon in it, and you're typically looking at, you know, 4 or 5 paragraphs to describe a number of things. So you've got a meeting with Morlian and then the King of the Mountain here, and then GM notes, very detailed ones on the King of the Mountain. So when you're using that much space, I've talked about this in talking about the Sargon modules by Bruce Cordell. There is a thing, you get to 2nd edition, which is actually very similar layout, you know, 2 column about this text, and to be fair, you have some 1st edition late modules which are similar, but where you have similar page counts to the old modules, but you have fewer words, and those words are much disproportionately taken up in slightly roundabout description. After the characters make camp the first day, they will hear the eerie wail of a wolf. The howl will soon be answered by a chorus of other wolves, but they will not approach the camp, nor can the characters find the animals in the dark. The next day, a random adventure will sight a wolf on a cliff high above them. The white-furred wolf is almost invisible against the snow of the high passes. It is huge, almost 3 times the size of a regular wolf. The wolf is out of normal spell range and will disappear the moment a character makes a move to capture it. If a character do find a way to attack it, use a wolf from the encounter below. If left alone, the wolf will follow the characters from a safe distance until noon of the next day. At that point, the character will reach an especially narrow pass, see map. In the middle of the snow-covered pass stands a regal-looking man wearing a plate chest piece, fur boots, and a fur cloak. In his hand is a dwarven drawn sword. Around him are 3 huge white wolves. To the left is a cave mouth covered by a fur curtain. To the right is a steep drop of 1,000 feet. The man will not wait for you to react, but there's like 4 more paragraphs of that. And it's not dreadful. It tells you what's happening, but this is something where, for all the way in which we can riff on it being overused, it's where the old school essentials style formatting, hyper tidy formatting, comes in handy. If you like this particular section of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 paragraphs plus GM notes on the encounter, which make up another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, another 7. Basically a page plus stats. 2 full columns plus stats of GM notes. That's a lot of detail on this, and there's some very important information in there, but that's not even before we get to the key of the mini dungeon associated with him. This goes back to this point of, you've got a similar length module to the old modules, and you're using all those words to do things that you could bullet point, or you could put each thought into a sentence, if you or at least many of them into a sentence. There's some detailed combat descriptions, and there is a useful map of the mini dungeon and the pass outside, which does give you locations for traps and stuff, and that's actually good. Of course, that's part of it, is that refer to map should be saving them more words. Refer to map before setup. Silver Wolves do this. That's then 5 rooms with it's linear, but 2 of the rooms are secret, so you've got to find them. And those ones have a weird pulsing crystal wall with stuff from the dwarves who used to live here and were mining at the edge of the Titan's Crown, and a magic tree with a ton of magic items on it, which the King of the Mountain has had. The King of the Mountain has one of the key bits of armor too. There's also 2 eagles and 8 wolves. It's a fun encounter. I should say the thing itself, the King of the Mountain, who is a self-actualization in legendary human king form, kind of the Titan, but also not the Titan. Sort of. I'm talking about again a fetish soul, maybe, or a lower level soul, almost of like, there's this guy who is, if you encapsulated in a completely inadequate way the Titan within a human, it's actually just an old reg-ed barbarian or something chief. But of course it's nothing like that. We then get to the dungeon itself, which we've got a map of there. Maps are pretty much all functional, very plain, and I prefer that. The first level, there's an overview, which is that there are good flying angely like fairy people go around cleaning stuff on the top. They don't fight people. And there's evil lizardy type people on the bottom. And then there are also lots of goblins in 2 factions, and there are white apes who have joined the renegade goblin faction, who are, I guess, they're kind of neutralish. They've abandoned the goblins who serve the evil dirge, and they're trying to, you know, eke out a life. There's also a wandering eccentric archaeologist, Cletus Fruse, and he is confused, but he knows stuff, and he can give you clues about the giant, the Titan. You then get a list of what the armor does. The armor is cool. It's actually, there's a big catch-them-all aspect to this, and if you want players, because getting all the armor together and going onto the throne, well, you then don't want to take it off. Then you go on the throne, you're annihilated, but you wake the Titan. Is the punchline. There's reasons why players might be tempted to put it all together. The gauntlets both add damage, one allowing a second full attack functionally, and one being allowing you to open ice. The van braces are AC. The helm is true sight. The chest and back piece is flight. The right greave is double running speed, with the left greave the same, and together they triple it. And the boots only work together, but they work as boots of stealth and quieting the clanking of the suit of armour. So these are all very powerful items, and you're going to want to collect them and get them together, and they can fit anyone from a hill giant to a halfling. The top level and the bottom level are summed up quickly. The top level is very short and is only this bit that I've already shown you. The bottom level, the 5th level, is that page, and there's some notes on, well, I say that, it's not that page, it's half that page, and then the rest is about waking up the Titan. Basically, the top level is pure good. It's just the fancies hanging out, and they don't really want you to ruin anything, but they'll just try to convince you not to. There is an insane fancy who might attack you, so there is a combat with a +2 spear. And the bottom, the dirge, just keep attacking you in a horrible, and that's where the dirge lay their eggs. They will kind of ask you to destroy. They can recruit you if they don't immediately attack you. But yeah, there's not much going on there. The main levels are these, therefore the middle, 2nd, 3rd and 4th, and that's where the battle for the Titan's soul, as it were, this battle between good and evil is being fought, with slight advantage, evil, I guess, because there are evil things up on the 2nd level. But yes, let's go through that. The big highlight of what's going on in these levels is, and this is the big strength of the module, is that because it has a gimmick, this is the imaginings of a Titan. It allows you to have very short distances between massively different monsters, and all kinds of weird monsters who you almost can't, you know, just incredible ecology to get together. But it makes sense because they are what the Titan has seen and therefore dreamt of over the long millennia of its sleep. There are some real things like Cletus Fruse or the goblins. They are from the Prime. They're not imagined. Things in there can become real and can survive leaving when real as well, which is fun. And there's a few different things going on within there as well. But there's so there's a lot of interesting ideas, lots of interesting monsters near each other. This is the Sojcanthian thing, and there's an organic Gygaxian naturalist reason why, and generally speaking, there's reasonable observations about how they fit together. An impressive thing is that, especially after how long the King of the Mountain section is, and kind of how long the dungeon intro is when you really think about it. That's another 5 pages. In 20 pages, there's a lot of rooms. It's not small, it should be said. I guess so it's 46 on the top level. Oh, sorry, on the 2nd level, which is the level you enter as well. So relevantly, it's the core level. There's 51. Oh, they're consecutive. It's a 64-room dungeon, of which over 2/3 is on the 1st level. On the 1st level you enter. It's got a good looping map. You can see actually when you have it from above, it is like the hemispheres of a brain, which is fitting. And there's some vertical tricks and horizontal tricks, passages going underneath passages and so on. It's not really a Jaquaid map. There's not millions of ways in and out of different places. There are a couple of stairs down and a couple of stairs up is the big thing. Basically, there are a few options there. There's Wandering Monsters, which is a mixture, a converted dirge who's nice, fancies, renegade goblins, silver wolves who have come through the dirge level, which is the only other extra entrance, theoretically a way out if needs be, guard goblins and white apes, Cletus shrews, bugle sounding far off, presumably from 2 levels down, 1 level down the arena, the archaeologist. There's different things, not all hostile, and of course, depending on the numbers and stuff, you should be reaction checking. This is assumed into the mechanics here. One sign this is a module that has been made and tested and designed with the actual game, albeit a game that's open for interpretation, that actually existed of first edition AD&D, rather than sort of like, here's these rules which you can use to interpret this story. There's ratmen summoning devils you might be able to negotiate with. There's a statue that's making it's rumbling such a form of speech that things above the ground are being destroyed, but if you can withstand the damage or cast if you can deal with that or cast silence or whatever else, you can get a book, which is 1,000 XP for a magic user. And there's cockatrices, there's a stasis field, there's a kobold druid who's a good guy who's trying to train the renegade goblins. He is actually chaotic good rather than neutral or whatever. There's then you're in the renegade goblin layer. Then there's evil high elves with their ogre mage cook and their chain centaur prisoner, and a giant snake in their bedroom little complex there. They've got a bunch of magical stuff. There's both levels of challenge here. You've got high elves with I think the females are 5/3 magic user fighter, and so they've got fear, haste, etc. And the males are fighters with +2 chainmail and +1 long swords, AC 3. You're talking about quite good fighters, and especially with things like hold person, fear, web, things that can really screw over an attacking party. The chain center will help you though. This all uses, by the way, the entrance into the high elf layer, a sort of semi-randomized push button or something, spin round, revolving door which sends you into a random room. It's dumb. It's not. It's clever, but it's dumb, and it's meant to be. It's meant to just be a sense of faint surrealism. There's a Lilliputian city who will fight you and become a better and better fighter. First level fighter the next round, first round, level 2 the second round, level 3 the third, and are hitting for 1d6 and then 1d8 later. They can fire voice for 10 rounds, but yeah, you can also potentially not hurt them and not be attacked by them. There's a miniature village, and my party actually ended up kind of apologising for the damage they did and giving great beer cask, I think, and becoming like gods, or at least godlings, to these Lilliputians. An eternal struggle room, a self-portrait of the Ice Titan, but this is actually a man made of blue ice who is drawing geometric figures on the snow and says he is the Ice Titan. He wants to talk about geometric shapes. There might be a book you have from a different area about geometric shapes, and he will open up and talk about the fact he thinks about good and evil. So this is a way of actually discovering the core stakes. You might not necessarily go there. It is not a trivially easy room to get to, though not impossible by any means. It's beyond I think that's the Eternal Struggle room down there, and you're going up to there. The Eternal Struggle room is a place with... Eternal Struggle room has a... Does it have an item in it? I'm fairly sure it has an item, or at least one thing there near there does. Yeah, the left boot is there. And the stasis field, another kind of trap room. There's lots of trap rooms or trick rooms. Though some of these are going to lead to fights, the Eternal Struggle room is an obvious one. Several of the get an item places can be done a different way, or have to be done. So the stasis chamber is the most obvious one for that. Yeah, there's a silver fancy that you can recover the wings for. It's like a statue, and if you from 2 levels down, and then it'll fly around and clear out the whole level of dirge. So there's a sort of there's a few Kunzian depths like that. They're fairly simple ones. There's not really full-on Kunzian depths, but there's a bit of that as well. There is a kobold necromancer, also with renegade goblins. He's not as nice as the druid, but you know, not necessarily, don't need to be his enemy. There is another devil, the giant slugs, statue in chains, renegade goblin headquarters. There's a soul gem with a dwarf who doesn't acknowledge you, and will, if the gem is this gem that's in the room is removed, he will die because the gem has captured his soul. There's things you can do about getting rid of it. And yeah, I think I might have missed it, but there's like a big giant ant layer with multiple ant tribes fighting. There's merman isles who have an item, and as I say, some of these places you can sort of sneak around, or you can solve a puzzle. Some are straight fights, but it's massively varied. It's something where you're and things connect. You get information from different people about places to go. People like Cletus could help you. You could negotiate with renegade goblins. I guess there's other things again you could do. Some of these creatures are real, some are not. In the sense that some have fairly low reality ratings and some have higher reality ratings. The next level is mostly characterised. It has a few other important rooms, but is mostly characterised by this big block in the middle, which is an arena which symbolically is representing great battles between good and evil that are going on. And the people your random encounter around the level are much like that. Elves and dwarves marching around, a Lamassu who doesn't actually give a reality rating for it, I don't think. But very powerful, good caster, werebears, brownies, blink dogs, androsphinx, shadu, hobgoblins, Medusa, kobolds, wraith. I mean, a wraith, even for a 6th or 7th level party, could be, and this is levels 3 to 7 allegedly. A wraith could be pretty fatal for like a average 5th level party. So again, there's challenges there. It's an assumption that there's an assumption here that you actually should. In fact, on level 3, you're always getting an encounter every turn. I don't think I actually ran it like that. I don't think I ran it like that. The level above is a 1 in 6 chance per turn. But this middle level, where there's the constant war in the grim darkness of the mountain, there is only war. There's always an encounter, but many of them are good, and there's no reason you, if you're a basically benevolent party who's not trying to destroy the world, there's no reason you need to fight them. So, and certainly my party, parts of my party made friends with some of them. The assassin attempted to kill the androsphinx and barely got away with it, as in barely got away with his life, not with killing it. Didn't succeed. There's then a sub encounter chart for the arena itself, which includes like a wyvern attacking, or an ogre running out, or a curse ring of flight running out, and this ogre crashing down. Well, there's a trap there, isn't it? You've got a ring of flight, but you're going to wonder why it didn't work. Correctly wonder why it didn't work. And there's a couple of ones on that level as well. A kind of ganky, silly thing with a good hill giant holding a succubus who's disguised as a young girl as prisoner. You see that lots of these tend toward the possibility of social solutions. but they're very open. You need to get these items. There's 9 items, because Morlin has one. He's hired you, so there's 9 items. And in that case, you could just go and, because it's trapping the succubus, you could maybe work out a different way to trap the succubus. You're going to be tempted to help the succubus to just get it. That's the easiest way. Yeah, there's the other item at this level. The gauntlet is a couple of dirge picking up kobold bodies. So that's actually quite an easy one, but it's again just quite different, isn't it? And you're going to have to search through the kobold bodies to get it, because you won't necessarily know it's even there. Will you even bother engaging these dirge, tidying up corpses and occasionally eating them? Thematically, as we go lower again, level 4 is more evil. It is the level where evil is predominant. The sign that evil is overall winning is that you've got the guard goblins up on level 2, the entrance level. There's special skeletons who cause fear. There's a blue dragon, but he's kind of wants to be a vegetarian and he grows magic radishes. He is kind of evil though. He has the helm. I think the way I ran that was does it actually give away? Yeah, the dragon has grown attached to the helm and will only give it up if an equal or better magic item is traded. So again, you could fight the blue dragon, you could sneak in and get it. The assassin tried to go and steal it in my one, failed. Was caught sneaking and didn't even get to the point of getting in enough trouble. But very lucky assassin in general. But yeah, was happy to trade for a bunch of stuff from the labyrinth that's on this level, which has some minotaurs. And the minotaurs have bronze bugbear fangs with hill giant strength power. The minotaurs themselves have +2 double-handed axes, 2-handed axes. And then there's a variety of other things going on. There's mushrooms. You might be able to get poison, or you might be able to get magical curing mushrooms from it. Again, that's the I'm in the B1 magic potion kind of room, or any kind of magic button room, isn't it? And you can get the fancy wings that are on an animated dirge statue. That's where they've been attached. Hell for dirges. It's just a gag. There's just it's a beautiful meadow that dirges hate, and there's a dirge inside who wants to be allowed to leave, and if you escort him out, he'll fade away because he's been released from hell. There's a giant hellhound with an attached chain of hellhound control, so that's funny as well if you can get it to work. There is, and then the final room of that is a room of stuffed adventurers. There is an item in there, but one of the stuffed adventurers is a spectre, so you want to go and get the item, but there is a spectral undead. There's loads of stuff. There's just loads of ideas, loads of kind of just... The main thing I come away with thinking is there's lots of fun interactions, and both implied and explicated fun ideas, fun encounters, and both implied and explicated interactions. Far more than many perfectly okay modules. The big thing going on as well is that, for good or bad, it's very silly. It's a silly module in one way. I don't mean the interactions are dumb, or the NPCs you deal with are ridiculous. I mean, and there's some interesting stuff like the little society of renegade goblins whose ancestors were trapped and who have decided to go against the dirge and hide out with their white ape friends and these weird kobolds who are teaching them, again, good versus evil. There's actually a fairly serious, perfectly sincere, high-level good versus evil discussion, because how things stand will affect whether the Titan wakes up. Well, you have to make an account of the dirges and fancies killed during the adventures, and you have to then kind of work out how many there are, and the Titan, when it wakes, will be lawful good if there's basically more fancies, is twice as great, and the dirges have to go downstairs and never come up again. If they stay neutral, if the dirges win, then the fancies are banished up, and everything becomes disgusting. and if it's equal, the Titan it awakens bewildered, scatters the armor through his mind, and goes back to sleep because he hasn't answered the great conundrum which he'd. So he's using this at, this is a sign that when they can put together the Gundam suit, then it's time to answer the question. It does say, if your campaign has a place for Mile High Elder Ice Titan, feel free to incorporate him as a very influential non-player character in whatever form he reawakens. Otherwise, the prudent game master will keep him exactly where he is. If you decide not to have a Mile High Ice Titan in your campaign, use this reason. He'll not move simply because he cannot, because his neural pathways have become clogged. After all, he's been sleeping for a long time, and he has to unclog them over the next 300 years. It's a decent excuse, isn't it? But the final fun thing there is that it's willing to say, Broodmother Skyfortress style, let's blow up your campaign. Do you want something just weird and cool, and something the players can really say, we changed the world, we made this happen? And I think that's good. I think that's basically a major thing you should be allowing your players to do, organically based on their decisions rather than on a pre-written story. That's how the adventure ends. Of course, it started with the Ferroberg section saying, well, Morlion's going to want this stuff, and he's kind of evil. You might not want to give him the stuff. This is what happens if you clash with him. By the way, there's also these assassins running around town, and this one guy wants you to get rid of them. By the way, there's also dwarves who are unhappy with the situation. So there is a kind of mini setting. That side of it, though it sounds cool, and from what I described, you can tell it's not terrible. That side of it is more vestigial, and suffers the most, along with the King of the Mountain mini dungeon, from word bloat. The dungeon itself is usually, you're talking about stuff, is usually just a few paragraphs long. It's not dissimilar length, so it takes up more page space than plenty of, say, G1 to 3 rooms. Plenty of them are just one Troll's Hideaway, usually empty, but there's a chance that Borgar the renegade troll is hiding behind the partition, munching on a fancy. He's quite high up. He doesn't have any treasure, but there we are. The trolls come from the outside. He's quite high up. He's quite dangerous. You're 6th or 7th level though, maybe, so you should be able to deal with that. I think there's other stuff to praise, like as I've just said, the campaign changing element, or that you can use or don't have to. The pre-gens are very good, which is not common. It's by 1984 is not a module that TSR is making, generally speaking. You get kind of odd things in the B series, actually, particularly, which are still really fun, and you get some bits in Dragon even into the mid-80s, which are good. And the split for Dungeon, I think, is slightly later than that. You actually get, by the late 80s and early 90s, you have more or less, of all people, the only person who's still publishing adventures that have that sort of open-ended dungeon environment at all, pretty much, is Ed Greenwood, and he's publishing stuff he wrote in the 70s and early 80s and he's publishing via TSR. Even the good designers in the late 80s and early 90s tend to be doing other kinds of stuff. Zeb Cook is a good example of that. If you look at what he's doing then, is very much moved away from the mid 80s onwards to the mid 90s with the rise of Cordell. It moves away from doing this, and so the fact that you can even get this, the fact that in 1984 someone said, why not have a weird monster zoo with just insane existential stakes that could destroy your campaign, is admirable. And the fact it's executed quite well, really quite well on the whole, with the caveats I've offered, I think means it's deserving of praise and reading. It definitely ranks up there amongst the very best third-party products I've read. I mean, there are many third-party products from the 70s and 80s and early 90s or whatever, but of those I've read, this is, after Caverns and City State and stuff, this is my favourite. If you've read it, if you've run it, tell me what you think in the comments. Tell me your favourite old school third-party products as well, and I will see you next time.